welcome to the podcast Transformations.
Thank you very much.
My name is Nic Banck, and for this episode, I have my guest Chris, and currently living in Denmark. Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Chris, you and I, we know a bit of each other through INSEAD, but if you were to describe yourself to the listeners, how would you do that?
Personal introduction. So like what Nick said, I live in Copenhagen, Denmark now, but I'm originally Indonesian. So when I grew up, I was raised very Asian, so to say, like a more conservative Catholic Chinese Indonesian. I moved to France in 2020 for INSEAD, and then I went to Copenhagen right after, and I now work here at Maersk. And what you're seeing is one of the new meeting rooms in the new part of Maersk, which is just finished this year. If you get a chance to visit Copenhagen and you have a friend in Maersk, it's a good idea. It can be a good idea to visit the office. It's a nice place.
Yeah.
And we have a very nice bistro. And I'm also currently the global Pride lead for Maersk. So I run the whole Pride community globally, and I have my leads in places like Chile, Canada, US, Japan, Italy, South Africa. I just took a note like this morning. That's why I can just say all of it.
Sure.
And on my day job in Maersk, for which I am actually getting paid for, I'm currently leading the product development for our last mile product in Europe. But by the time this podcast is out, I probably have moved to my new role. And if this is already at that time, hi, my name is Christian, and I'm the global head for middle mile and last mile process standards and governance for Maersk.
There you go. A little plug for your next assignment.
A little plug, yes. So I hope this will be released at least after 1 August. So then it will be right there and then.
Yeah, we can make that agreement.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good. Yeah, so we're sitting here in the Esmeralda offices, overlooking, to the old military area across. Where you see the submarine, the seal, and it's a beautiful day. It's midsummer today.
Yes. Sankthansaften.
Yes, Sankthansaften, exactly. And it's a really special day for many Danes, and we've just had an exceptional IMD and INSEAD LBS event here at Esmeralda, where your company's CEO gave a speech, as well as the professor from IMD. So a great way to start, I think, for many, like a vacation season coming up. So in terms of the Pride, your Pride work, how big is the Maersk, so we say, community? Do you have?
So this is the challenge with Maersk, right? Maersk, as a company, AP Moller Maersk, has a lot of subsidiary companies and like adjoining companies, which all have their own community. So you have people like us here, the office community. You have people, the seafaring community. You have people in the warehouses. You have people in the terminals, and they're not at all connected in the same way. So one of the challenge that we have as Global Pride is that how do we make sure these people reach? How do we reach these people, and how do they get information? Maersk, we are now, as if I remember our DEI page, the last one, I think we are more than 110,000 people now, spread across more than 130 countries around the world, with obviously so many different backgrounds, so many different cultures, and in a lot of places, it's not even safe to be part of the LGBTQ community. So officially, the people that we reach through our communication channel is around 400-ish, but that number does not tell the full number, because even in Copenhagen alone, for Copenhagen Pride, we had more than 750 registrations, which is much more than any of the previous years. And I also know we have a lot of people who reached out personally to our leads, and we directly suggest them not to be official members in the Yammer or in the teams, because they live in a country where that is not accepted. And for us as Maersk, our employees is always number one. Their safety is number one. We can't compromise on that.
It sounds amazing, both the developmental journey that the company is going through, but also the, shall we say, the changing of the membership of, of the group. We were just told a few minutes ago that 40% of the more than 100,000 people, 40% of those have been here less than 2 years. So such an immense change in the population, right? And I used to work here many moons ago, and I look around and I see so many young people. I see people from all over the world all doing so many different and exciting things. So it must be just an exciting time to be here also.
Absolutely. I think the time we talk about this, when the time when you were here, if you wear something like what I'm wearing now, you're probably get asked to go home and never come back.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think that's true. So talking about transformations, what would be your definition of transformation, or of a transformation?
I think in our world right now, everyone associates transformation with something that's colossal, something that's massive. But for me, transformation just means a change. It's just a fancy way that says, oh, you're changing from A to B. It can be something small, it can be something big, it doesn't really matter. And there's can be a few aspects, right? There's going to be your personal transformation, where it spans either your personal development or your career transformation. And then you talk about business transformation. That means you're typically talking about now culture transformation, or like business model transformation, or technology transformation, digital transformation, the fancy way now. So there's so many different kinds, and I don't think it would be fair to give one definition a better definition than another. I like to keep things simple. That's part of my job. It's just a change from one to another.
Okay, thank you. It was interesting to hear your CEO's definition of transformation. At least it was, and I've actually heard one of my other guests also shared that perspective, namely that it's not, transformation. It's sort of like a plan. You won't know, if it worked until afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So it was sort of interesting to say that sure, we can have thoughts and ideas and ambitions, but we won't really know until afterwards, right? I thought that was an interesting perspective. So for you, it is just a change.
It's just a change.
Yeah.
Because in the end, a lot of transformation happens without you even realizing it. The planned transformation, like what the professor said, a lot of them fail spectacularly.
Yes.
But the one that comes from the small things, the grassroots transformation, that's the ones that persist. That's the one that lasts a long time. You know how MERS even starts on the Pride journey as a whole company? It was not planned. It started in around 2015, 16. Thomas, if you see this video and I mess up the dates, please don't kill me. At that time, do you know Captain Thomas?
Yes.
Yeah. So he was interviewed by a Danish seafaring magazine as a gay captain, and that sparked a lot of conversation of something that he thought it's gonna be like, a small feature in the magazine, like half a page somewhere, and not like front page. And so that sparked the conversation. Then he got a slap at the he got a little bit of a slap on the wrist, on like, hey, don't do that. You need to tell the social media and the communications team, if you're gonna do a public interview like this, that's gonna be that big. And he did not expect that, right? But that sparked, okay, how does Maersk executive, how do we as a company approach this? Should we step back or should we move ahead? And I mean, if you can see now, we doubled down on that. We completely went through, and it all started from someone getting an invite to do an interview that he thought is going to be, it's something personal. I'm just a gay captain. I share. Very simple.
So what is the story that you want to share of transformation for this podcast?
I think I will spare you the business or the career kind of transformation, because I think that's honestly a bit boring. So I'll go a little bit more on the personal side and how it aligns with the business side. So as I said earlier, I grew up in a very more Catholic conservative Chinese Indonesian family. and I grew up going to the church every week. I went to Catholic school for juniors, high school, and high school. And being part of the LGBT community, that is not, it is hard to be myself. And given the context of being in Indonesia, where gay rights, the concept of gay rights, I don't think even exists, and it's now very difficult. It's not even possible to talk about it. So growing up, it's always a bit of a struggle on the personal identity. And when I was 14, 15, so around high school, junior high school, I already know what my, like, I have an inkling of what my preferences are, of what I like, what I don't like, but I just keep on lying to myself, like, for a very long time. And then I entered the business world where I work also with a lot of public sector. And if you think private sector people are conservative, oh my God, public sector people are even more conservative.
Wow.
And this applies, I think, everywhere in the world, right? Not just in Indonesia. So it's even more, okay, I can't talk about it. I can't be open. So whenever I got asked, oh, do you have a partner? Do you have a girlfriend? And like, no, I don't know. I don't have that. Yeah. And that goes for a long time, right? And then it changed. Now this is where transformation happens. I started my working journey at Microsoft, which is globally a very accepting company. It's a very inclusive company. But they did not have representation of the LGBT community in Southeast Asia, not in Southeast Asia, sorry, in Indonesia. So it was kind of like starting to push to me that, okay, it's okay, I can start to be open, but I just need to kind of like select like who I be open with. And then when I moved to another firm, and then I moved to consulting to Accenture in 2017, they have like a local pride community in Indonesia. Nobody is out, but it's clear that it's pride, it's LGBTQ plus and allies community, and that helped me feel comfortable and be able to be open about that in the workplace. And when that happens, then I become I become more authentic in the workplace. I can speak about my personal life. I can connect more like with other people, and that in turn also helps my career, because then people can connect with me better and they feel more personal and they're more willing to help me. And after that, that's at the point where like, okay, I can be out to my workplace and I feel quite safe doing it. And then I went to INSEAD in France, which is a whole different environment. And that's where I, with all the people that I meet, it's that's the point where I change and become, okay, I can be public with anyone that I meet here. I don't need to really care about whether they work here, they study here and such. France is a very welcoming country. INSEAD is a very welcoming community, so that was fantastic. And then I moved to Copenhagen, where it's very open. And then because it's very open and it's very accepting, then I become even more public. And now I got somehow stumbled to lead the global pride of MERS. That was not planned at all, right? And here you are. You see me here today and taking up a very interesting role very soon. And I've been blessed to do very interesting things in this company in the MERS transformation.
I want to ask you a personal question, and you can decide not to answer it.
Yes.
But you talk about your work, you talk about school, but what about your family? You know, because I would assume that they are in the old culture or in the other culture.
That's another transformation journey.
Okay.
So my mom knew about she knew I was not straight in, I'm so bad with years, 2018. Um where she met my when she met my partner for the first time. We didn't say we're partners, but she realized kind of, and she asked me directly whether that was just a friend, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's my partner. Um, she had a hard time like accepting it and reconciling it with her previous, with her beliefs, with the religion and everything. And it was she was still kind to me, don't get me wrong, and she was trying to be supportive in what I do, but it was very clear that she's a little bit struggling internally. And after a couple of years, and then I managed to find like a priest in Indonesia that does work with the LGBTQ community. I introduced the person to her, and through like some counseling, some discussions, and like she managed to like be a little bit closer to that. And now she's very supportive with it. And like a couple of months ago, I had my wedding here in Copenhagen, and she was here. So that's another transformation. I didn't talk about my dad because surprisingly, I both me and my mom thought it's gonna be a challenge, but he only knew last year, and he didn't really care. And like, yeah, okay. So when me and my partner visited Indonesia end of last year, no, beginning of this year, like 1 to 4 January or something. So we stayed at my parents' place, and my dad was very welcoming, and it was it was very interesting that that did not went as expected, but in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say that he didn't care, you mean that he wasn't bothered, he wasn't annoyed, but it was not a big thing for him. It was as long as you're happy, or what was his perspective, do you think?
I think he's just more like, I mean, it's your life. Like, yeah, I'll just be supportive as a parent. And that was good. He didn't take it personally. He didn't think that, oh, did I raise you wrong or kind of thing. So yeah.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing your experience. Now is the time on the podcast where, through the wonders of modern technology, and I don't know if some of the young people out here are working on that, but we're going to be experiencing time travel. So, I'm going to snap my fingers. And then when the listeners come back after the break, a week will have passed, and you will have listened to yourself, maybe watch yourself,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about your reflections. So, see you in a week.
See you. Thank you, Nic.
Thank you. Bye now. Hello, Christian.
Hello again.
Hello. Thank you for coming back on the podcast today.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Yes, it's actually me visiting you here in Esplanade again, and it's now a week later. So, how are you doing today?
Doing very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Managed to hear the recording. It was interesting interesting to hear myself there.
Good. I'm just so curious. How was it for you to listen to yourself on the podcast?
I think for me, I'm used to listening my own voice in recording, so it's not a surprise. And if you've seen the Mersk official LinkedIn or the social media, you've seen me a couple of times, and I've watched that many times because through the editing process and such, because it's all not one recording, right? So the voice and everything, it's there, like it's normal. For me though, I was surprised that I didn't think I went that vulnerable, but that was but I think what I said, it was all authentic, but it was all like, it was surprising that I let myself be at that level of vulnerability. I thought I was a bit less than that, but I was happy from what I hear, and yeah, it was totally honest.
Yeah. What are your reflections after listening to yourself?
My reflections was, I think I've come a long way, like in being authentic, in being honest, in allowing myself to be vulnerable and not putting up a mask all the time. And I also realized that it reflected in the gestures that I do. That if I look at myself like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I remember that when I do presentations or when I do these kind of like discussions, I use much less gestures and expressions. And it didn't occur to me how much I use like, like hand gestures or like change in expression or the change in like tone in the way that I speak, and the adjustment of speed depends on which part of what I discuss. That was interesting.
one of the key points that I got out from obviously also listening and viewing the video was your key point about being authentic. And I wonder if there's a link back to your own definition of transformation. Remember, you talked about it being just a change.
Yes.
And yet here you are, right?
Yes.
So do you think there's some sort of connection between those two things, the journey that you have been on, and then the role of being, more authentic?
I think it's like what we discussed a little bit, well, what I spoke to before, on a lot of times it's not planned, and a lot of times it's those change step by step, little by little, like over a long period of time, that it's a change and it becomes some sort of a transformation. And that's what happened also, right? Like when I was younger and I was more closed off to the world, and I always think that there's a certain persona I need to project to the world. There's a certain there's a right way of doing things, and over time it becomes a little bit more, screw it, I'll do what's right for me. I'll be honest.
So where do you think that change comes from, this element of going from, so we say, other people's expectations to you, quote unquote, just becoming yourself? Where do you think that switch happened, and what led to it, maybe?
I think the surrounding factor changes a lot, right? And that's what highly supports any change. Because when 10 years ago, I just started in the workplace, which means that I felt the need to prove myself that I'm not just a fresh grad, because often the prejudice towards fresh grad is that they're dumbasses. Like they're new to the workplace, they don't know anything, they're here to waste your time. Like often, came there to the workplace and like, oh, I need to prove them wrong, that I can do it, that I'm not struggling, and those kind of things. And that made it hard, right? To be able to say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. Can you help me understand what exactly is needed here? It's a weird thing that 10 years ago I wasn't comfortable doing that, but now I'm perfectly comfortable doing that, because the support system is different. Over time, when I've started to build experience in the workplace, that I've worked in big companies, I've ran my own company before, it changes the perspective a little bit, that I don't need to prove myself. And that, I think, was the realization, and letting that sink in is the key driver. Because it's always easy, right, to say, oh, don't worry about it, oh, don't think about it. Yeah, but still.
I think it's interesting that you place a lot of emphasis on the, as you call it, the surroundings. You can call it the environment, the support system, right? Because here we are in sunny Copenhagen. Last time you talked about the role of the pride community, and at the same time you were also highlighting that there were many areas where it's actually not safe to be part of this element. So what are some of the factors that you think is important to create this sort of not only physical safety but also psychological safety within this group for people to be themselves?
That's a very loaded question.
Yes.
You know that, Nic.
Yes, I think, yes. Or I could say, are there some specific elements that you try to create in order for to create a safe environment where people can be true to themselves, be authentic, whatever that means?
I think there's a different kind of being authentic, right? There's the kind of authentic to express your opinion. Then last time what we talked about, it was more about authentic to be myself and to admit who I am if I'm not part of like the majority. If we talk about the authentic in terms of opinions, I honestly think it starts from the leadership. And what is the signal that the top leader, the middle management, and the line management, what do they say? What kind of jokes do they make? It's very important. What kind of reaction they have when someone speaks up. When the reaction is like, the first reaction is negative, then of course your team will learn not to speak up or share their opinions. And for the authenticity to be someone's personal selves, look at the jokes that people are making. That's typically the signal. It's not about the CEO telling the company that yes, we support, we would like more women in the leadership, we would like to be more inclusive to people with disability. It's the matter of in the hallways here, outside, what do you listen in the workplace? And that's often what flies under the radar.
Yeah. So coming back to the environment, I think it's interesting to have first to hear you share your story about first it was the environment that was not supporting you to your own experience of being self-authentic to now being an environment where you can experience that. And I'm thinking whether there are other things that we can take away. So one thing is you say the environment, another part is then the role of management. And then you say something about, it almost sounds like, if not, you talk about jokes. I know Danes are notoriously bad for using satire, which is a way of expressing something that we mean, and it can be very rude and very mean, actually. And it must be difficult in a such a global company to find out what's actually
Yes,
as we say, allowed or okay to talk about, right?
One thing about the Danes, though, was from my experience with the Danish people here, they have a high self-awareness of that. One of my first days when I got a bit like, I met a couple of Danish people, and then one of them told me directly to my face, Chris, if I don't insult you, probably I don't like you. Oh. That's just how we joke.
Okay.
I'm like, okay. Thanks for the notice.
Yes.
Thanks for the notice.
Yeah.
If I'm too kind with you and I'm very pleasant and I'm very politically correct, it really means I don't trust you. And that's what that seems to be the sense I'm getting from how most Danish people joke and talk and like banter with each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, I don't know, because sometimes it can sometimes you can sense whether the joke is made in good humor or the joke is coming from a place of, sorry to say, but a little bit of ignorance. And there's usually a very thin line, but it's a fine line.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that? I mean, do you feel that you constantly have to be on guard, or are you now, so we say, properly assimilated, or because being here at Espanade 50, that's not Denmark as a whole. This is a very strange little community. This is a village unto itself, right?
Yes.
But maybe there's something special here, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Because most of the people here also realizes that, and most people, I think, have the awareness of how things can come across with people from other culture. I've only seen, not to say that everyone's perfect, of course. I've seen and met with a couple that's very, how you say, unaware. Let's put it that way. Maybe they haven't integrated to the community or to the culture, but it's often, for some people, I think it could be difficult, and maybe they're also like, maybe they're here for only a month or 2 months and they have a harder time. There was just a survey from internations, if I remember correctly, like an expat online group, and based on the survey, Denmark is one of the hardest places to integrate to as an expat.
Oh wow!
I think number 51 out of 53 countries.
Oh wow! And what were some of the factors that were leading to that?
That was the part that was that was very stark difference. Quality of life is great, effective finance is decent, and a lot of things is great, but the integration part to the society, to the community, that's where it's more difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I want to come back to your the story that you shared last time we met. If you were to somehow, be able to give your younger self some piece of advice based on what you know now.
Yeah.
I know it's a thought experiment, but what are some of the things that you would tell this younger person?
You'll be fine. I think even if I say things like do this, do that, it's all the gift of hindsight, right? Like if I had if my the best thing that I would have said is just that you'll be fine. Do what you do. Do what you do best. Do your best, and things will fall into place. There's no need to overly worry about it. There's no need to lose sleep over it. Keep on building keep on keep on doing what you do. Build those relationships. Try to be honest with yourself. Accept yourselves, and yeah.
I sort of get the feeling that you were one of those that made it. I mean, when you look back, your own journey, your own progression, you've been, obviously clever, smart, fortunate in many ways. What about all the others? What about those that didn't have the same opportunities for you?
Oh, I would not be delusional. I'm very privileged. Like, I think I'm very blessed in the sense that somehow, some way, a lot of people trusted me. I went out from university for my bachelor's, and I started to work at Microsoft, and that was like I had a very nice boss who trusted me in what I do and what I, even though I had zero experience, right, as a fresh grad, and that kicked off a good career. And I know a lot of people don't have that luck to start like that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays there's a lot more ways to be able to build those network, and not to be afraid to reach out to people, right? Like I've had quite a few people reaching out directly to me on LinkedIn or even through Facebook sometimes, because it's I think my uni had a alumni group in Facebook. So some people do reach out and ask for advice and maybe ask for some references, like, hey, I would like to do this in my life. Like, I would like to find a career here. Do you know anyone? Can you help me break through to one or the other? And you don't get what you don't ask, which people often don't realize. When I applied for Microsoft, for example, 11 years ago, then 2012, 2013, 10, 11 years ago, I thought there's going to be I was in a more IT focused company, 5,000 graduates every 6 months, and half of them, I think half of them is definitely related to technology. I would have expected, hundreds of applicants from my uni. But when I talked to the HR and such, I realized that it was not even a couple hundred that applied. And it was because a lot of them already put themselves down that, oh, I'm not going to apply because what's the point? I'm not going to get it. And that kind of mindset, it's not something people can help with. And that kind of mindset could help you turn your luck around, because I wasn't born to a conglomerate family. I wish I did, but I'm not. I'm born to a middle class family in Indonesia. So it was very important to be able to, somehow, some way build those relationships, because in the end, you won't achieve anything alone, right?
Yeah. So it sounds like there's something about, one thing is the environment, but there's also something about putting yourself forward. I know certainly going through INSEAD, EMC for me, and MBA for you, it gives us access to certain rooms that we would otherwise not have had access to. But once we're there, it's up to us to act in a certain way. It's up to us to say, get out of it whatever we want. And sometimes we can sit in the back row. Sometimes we want to sit in the front. Sometimes we want to be on the podium. Sometimes we want to be the organizers. Sometimes we want to be the participants, right? But it's really up to us, right? And I think I think it's a very strong point to have that everything else can be perfect, but it's really up to ourselves to put our best efforts forward,
Indeed.
right? So that of course requires a lot of energy, some original thinking,
Yes.
but also the notion that I'm going to do this. It may not turn out exactly as I had expected, but if I don't apply, or if I don't put my name on the hat, if I don't sign up for a specific event,
Yes.
nothing's going to happen, right?
Yes.
It's very rare that things like fall out of the sky, except from the Danish flag. I'm sure you know from the Danish language test that you told me you're taking, right? So just a little bit of magic there. But having said that, a lot of it really just comes out of our best efforts, right?
Indeed.
And I mean, we have to be smart, we have to be diligent, but we have to act, right? We have to really do something about that. And I think, just coming back to your definition of transformation, is that it's just a change, just quote unquote rapid is, right? There's this element of it's just one change after another, right?
Indeed.
And I was interviewing a person yesterday, and we talked about what can instigate, what can start that transformation. And in that person's world, it was sort of the realization, oh shoot, something has gone wrong. And then it's like a back to standard movement, right?
Yes.
Whereas, and sometimes it's also about improving, the performance or your way of life or whatever it is. But here it's like you're taking a more proactive approach, right? There's something, you can see something could be better. You can see you could be in a better situation. You can change something for others. You can create a better environment, help others be more successful, right? And they may not realize that that's what they need right now, but with your experience and the things you've gone through, and I'm a huge believer in experiential learning, basically that we learn from the experiences, that if we just jump from A to K, we miss all the learnings, right? Yes. And sure, it's better just to have the final result in 2 lines, but it's not going to give us anything unless we actually have had all the experiences in between.
Indeed. This is like something interesting. There's 2 things I would like to share.
Sure.
The first thing is about when you're on a good track, it often sets your mind in a good position that you keep on going, like it becomes a good wheel, it's a good path. But once you stumble, then you keep on like, oh, why did I fail? Then, oh, why did I fail? And you fail again and you fail again because you're so nervous about doing anything else, and you need to somehow stop that and refresh. And the second thing, there's a research on this. Apparently, a lot of people in the LGBT community, especially gays and lesbians, tend to be overachievers. Yes, and the research points out it because I forgot where the research is from. It's actually, there's a book on it and I forget the name, honestly. But basically, it says that because a lot of gay, lesbians are marginalized, they feel that they are lacking because of their sexual orientation, they try to compensate it by overachieving in basically every other aspect in their lives. And that was definitely true for quite a lot of the gays and lesbians that I've met. Also, that might have applied a little bit to me. So there is a little bit of truth that sometimes that situation, that background, when you feel disadvantaged in one way or another, maybe that can also be a drive that you need to then overachieve on something else.
Yeah. Yes, it's interesting, because motivation can come in many different forms, right? Sometimes it's you get assigned to a certain activity because you're the best person for the job. Sometimes it's because you were the only person that was in the office that day, right? Sometimes it can be because nobody else wanted to do it, or sometimes it could be because everybody else has tried it and now it's up to you to fix it. So motivation and positions of opportunity can come from so many different places. As you say, it's not always that it's just like the best shiny new things, right? Sometimes we need to do the laundry. Sometimes we need to do the dishes. And then how we experience it, if we can turn that into a good experience, maybe having a conversation with our partner, or some quiet time, or some, like for instance, I listen to music. So actually I love to cook, because it's an opportunity for me to do just one thing. I don't need to worry or be considerate about other things. And I know if I look away, I'm going to burn the food, right? So it forces my attention. And, so if we can get, turn it into a positive thing, then it's like the lighter side of life. Whereas we know that anything that we see as being difficult or tough or hard, it drains us so much more. Even though it's the same thing we're doing, our experience is just different, right? And so that's like a positive psychology approach to it.
Absolutely. And I do recognize that for many people that motivation is a difficult thing to get, right? Because then you're expending so much effort for things that are uncertain. Like you don't know, like if this thing that you do, that you try so hard with, will actually have an impact on you like the long run. Just like you cook an instant noodle and then you see, okay, the guide says 3 minutes, but then like even if I let it be for like 5-10 minutes, it just gets a little bit soggier. It doesn't have any effect. So why does it matter that I follow like the instructions or such? I mean, it's an oversimplification, but sometimes with motivation, do you need to get it right, or do you just want to do randomly because in the end it won't have any effect? And what do you have in your mind, right? Which one affects you?
Christian, thank you so much for sharing your reflections, and thank you for the conversation today about our associations together. I want to thank you for taking the time to sharing your very personal journey. And actually, I was very moved when I listened to the first recording. I don't know if you remember this, but I sort of paused and then I said that I wanted to ask you a personal question. And I want to thank you for going along and answering questions about your family and your life. So thank you for today.
You're welcome. Happy to be part of this, Nic, and I'm looking forward to hear this when it's live.
Thank you. Goodbye.